Lessons Not Yet Learnt is a podcast that uncovers the costly mistakes that businesses keep making and how to finally move past them. Through storytelling, candid conversations, and expert perspectives, I'm on a mission to challenge outdated thinking, bring those overlooked lessons to the surface, and drive meaningful change, one story at a time. Hi, welcome back to Lessons Not Yet Learnt. I'm your host, Kiran Kachela, and today we're talking about the ick. That's right, that feeling of discomfort we feel whenever somebody asks us that really simple and inevitable question of, so, what do you do for a living? And we have to answer with that really self-promotional response. Now, I don't like self-promotion, just putting it out there. It feels really icky. I've been running my business for almost 14 years. And for about 10 of those years, I actually struggled to call myself a CEO because I felt like it was too self-promotional. I hid behind titles like consultant and then director until the title director no longer made sense on my org structure because I had other directors in the team. Now, whenever somebody asks me that question of what I do for a living, I used to respond with something really vague and really muffled, like, oh, I just run a small business, we just do projects. It was pathetic. But then I had that moment of reflection. What was I doing? I was essentially underplaying everything that I'd built from the ground up with the most amazing team, which is a boutique consultancy that works with public and private sector organizations and helps them save time, save cost, and improve performance. And by not self-advocating boldly for myself, I was essentially setting a ceiling for my team, but also my daughters. I want my daughters, I want my team to be able to go out there and talk about their achievements unapologetically and be bold. Would I want my daughters not being able to boldly self-advocate for themselves, not being able to celebrate their achievements? I wouldn't want that, and so I was setting a really bad example for them. So I went on a bit of a journey and started to work on myself and my elevator pitch, making sure that I was comfortable with explaining who I am, speaking boldly and unapologetically. And so whether I was going and speaking on large stages or whether I was just introducing myself to somebody new, I became comfortable with that. But if I'm being honest with you, my biggest ick moment wasn't those times standing on stages and wasn't when I had to introduce myself. It's actually this podcast. When I first started this podcast, it felt really uncomfortable because for the first time, I was putting myself out there without any filters. I was not hiding behind my company or my brand or my team. It's just me, raw and unpolished, out there, my authentic self. And that felt uncomfortable. And the worst thing was I have this friends WhatsApp group, and every time an episode would come out, my friends would post on there to celebrate and congratulate me. And it was absolute cringe. I literally didn't even want to open the messages, let alone respond. So I had to ask myself, why am I so uncomfortable with this? Why does it feel so cringe and icky? And the reality is that actually I was worried about what people thought of me. I was worried about what they thought about how I speak, what I say, what I talk about. And that was really acting as a bit of a blocker. But then I started to think about this a bit differently. I shifted my narrative. I shifted the narrative away from thinking about myself and what people thought about me and shifted it to my audience and my mission. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because if even one person listens to one of these episodes and learns something from it, does something differently, avoids another mistake, then I've done my job. Or if one person comes away from listening to this and sees a bit of me in them and realizes that thought leadership can come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, and sees that they can be represented in society, then I've done my job. And so by shifting the focus away from me and focusing more on my audience, I felt so much more comfortable. And it helped me realize that my self-worth isn't defined by the success of this podcast. So all of that has been a bit of a journey for me. But the reality is, as leaders, we all struggle with the ick at different points or in different circumstances in our journey. And this is a problem. Why? Because it costs leaders a seat at the table. And we'll be talking a lot more about that in some of our upcoming podcasts. But today I am joined by somebody that knows all about the ick. Susie Ashfield is one of the UK's leading speech coaches. Over the last decade, she's helped leaders and public figures look good, sound good, and feel great about public speaking. She's featured on BBC Radio 2, on Forbes magazine, on New York Post, and on nationwide broadsheets, and she's given speeches on stages across the world. She's also the author of a brilliant book, Just Effing Say It. Yes, very bold, but it is the ultimate guide to speaking with confidence in any situation, and I've started to read it. It is brilliant. Susie's going to help us unpack the uncomfortable truths behind why so many leaders, like myself, struggle with self-promotion. We'll look at the confidence gaps that cost leaders a seat at the table. Today, she's going to help us move away from cringe to confidence without losing our authenticity. So if you've ever mumbled an introduction or felt like a fraud and suffered from imposter syndrome, this one is for you. So Susie, I came to one of your workshops probably over a decade ago now, and I still remember it to this day. It was just so good. It was really memorable, and I came away. It was probably the first time I'd been introduced to like storytelling, and also my first sort of public speaking workshop. So how did you fall into this line of work?
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Thank you for having me on today. Almost entirely accidentally is the answer, as I think so many interesting things in life are. I am trained as an actor. So I spent,
really?
Yeah, absolutely. 3 years thinking about what the audience wants.
Okay.
But also doing strange things like running around, wearing no shoes, wearing only black clothes and pretending to be things like seaweed and animals. So that's not relevant to today.
Oh, I think it's more interesting.
We can definitely have a separate podcast to discuss that. From there, I did a little bit of acting work and a lot of voiceovers. But I think the key in all of this was that second bit, knowing what audiences want.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the question I answer for clients today still. Then I did some time in the city. I was an insurance broker for a bit. But I noticed during my time in that corporate world, there were these brilliant, really intelligent people who knew exactly what they wanted to say. They would open their mouth and it just wouldn't come out. You get sort of a mangled version of 300 words where 10 would have sufficed. And I started to think about that understanding of what the audience is after. And I thought this is where I could do something. And about 10 years ago, I started telling people that that's what I was going to do. And I still do it now. And really looking back, I should have said something more interesting like zookeeper or astronaut, but we are where we are.
Oh, well, listen, it sounds really interesting. And also it's so needed. I mean, I go into meetings all the time, and what you just described about people wanting to say something and articulate it, but they struggle to articulate it, and they either completely waffle or barely are able to explain what they're trying to say. You see it all the time.
Totally. And I think you must see it just as much as I do, because in that role of the consultant, you are the external party, and you've got to very quickly wrap your head around not only what they are saying, but how the rest of the world sees it. We've talked before about that curse of knowledge. You, as someone who is a founder or an entrepreneur, you know too much. From day one, you know too much. So your challenge is now, how do I explain this to the rest of the world in a way that makes sense to them?
Exactly. And especially in the world of transformation, you know, you've got to understand your audience. You've got to be able to define it, and you've got to be able to speak to them.
Totally.
You know, you've got to get away from the technical jargon, which I think there's way too much of in my line of work. There's just too much technical jargon.
Absolutely. Acronyms. Every single time I go into an office, there are acronyms and you don't even know you're using them. But there are acronyms to the extent that some teams that work in the same company use acronyms that only apply to their team, and they expect everyone else in the company, in the industry, in the world to understand that acronym, and it doesn't work. And I think that's a really good metaphor for how we all communicate. We always assume the audience has the same level of knowledge that we do, and they absolutely don't. And that's a brilliant thing. So now you know that, you've got to work out how to use it.
Yeah, you always hear that, pretend you're talking to a 9-year-old analogy, don't you? Of, it should be as simple as that to understand.
Totally. If you cannot explain it to a 9-year-old, you can't explain it to someone who's just walking down Borough High Street. You want to bring them in and tell them what's going on.
Exactly.
So that's a really good test. Ask yourself right now, if you're listening to this, can I explain what I do and why it's useful to someone who is totally external to my industry? And to sometimes, if you know a 9-year-old, ask them.
Yeah, exactly. My kids have managed to understand what I'm talking about now.
That's a good sign.
Thank God. So why do leaders struggle with articulation and public speaking so much?
I think it's two things. I think it's that first thing we talked about. They just know too much and they assume everyone has the same knowledge of them.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're right.
That feeds into this idea that I think everyone, to an extent, has a little bit of imposter syndrome. Everyone is slightly worried about proving their credibility. Communication is so frequently misunderstood as a test, and it's completely not that at all. So what happens is, firstly, you know too much. Secondly, you use any possibility of public speaking or communication as a way to justify yourself. You go, right, I'm going to use this as an exercise in demonstrating to the world that I know my stuff, that I'm worthy of being here. And that is where the jargon comes in. People go, this is not about the audience, this is about me and how I pass or fail this test. Imposter syndrome, you should have a little bit of it, right? That's what drives you.
Yeah.
That's what helps you perform every single time really, really well. At the same time, it's also a huge block. It's that perfectionist thing.
It's a really tough one, isn't it? Because you're right. It does make you want to perform better. It makes you want to practice and get better and better. But equally, it's the thing that gets in your head that then acts as a blocker because you're overthinking.
Totally. You set a bar for yourself mentally that is so high, with all of my help, with all of the external help you are not going to hit that bar. And the moment you don't hit that bar, the moment you tell yourself, well, I failed. So if you're setting yourself that goal of, this has to be a 10 out of 10, anything less than a 10 out of 10, I failed. If you then hit an 8 out of 10, you go, well, I failed. Completely, that's total write-off.
This is me all over, honestly. I have high standards for myself, and when I don't hit it, it's like, oh, it's so annoying, and it's cringe listening back to the podcast episodes for me, because I hate listening back to myself, and I'm like, I could have said that better, I could have done that better. But as you say, sometimes actually just being on that journey and developing and improving,
completely,
and also not focusing too much on yourself and remembering why you're doing this and what your audience wants to hear and why they care.
Yeah. We are all focused in on ourselves 100% of the time. And actually, that's a really good thing. You're up there worrying about what these people think of me. How are they judging me? Because you're judging yourself intrinsically. You're giving yourself a forensic examination as to how the audience, from all of the surveys I have been running in the last over a decade now, they're focused on things like, what time is lunch? When do I need to pick my kids up from school? They're not even thinking about how your hair looks. You're thinking about it. They're not.
That's so true. It's so true, isn't it? When when you're in the audience watching someone, you've got 101 things sometimes going through your head, and you're at the same time tuning into what they're saying, but you're not judging every second of what they're doing and saying and how they're saying it. But when you watch yourself back, or when you put that pressure on yourself, you're literally intrinsically looking at everything. Yeah.
One of my favorite gigs was I was helping a chief investment officer of a very large financial firm, and they did a very large event every year, and they sort of had about 7,000 people in the room. The production values behind this, it felt like, we were putting on something for Beyonce, not just some finance people. You cannot imagine the level of detail that goes into production like that. But people really worry about things. You know, you've got the script writer, you've got the person on the auto cue, you've got someone like me making sure they're waving their hands just enough, but not too much.
Yeah.
With all of that, the focus is on the audience and what the audience are thinking. But one of my great luxuries at that particular event was I could go in and out of the building, and I could move from being with the audience to being with the speakers. And, you know, there we are, sometimes messaging really up at 3:00 in the morning, making sure, well, do we need to use this word or that word, this word or that word? And 10 people are going, well, I think this word says... And the audience just aren't thinking that way.
They just don't care, do they?
They just don't care. And they send out a feedback form, and everyone fills out the feedback form, and it's very nice. But I would always leave that gig, and I'd get to kind of mingle with the crowd. And I'd sort of say, you know, I'd earwig on conversations.
Yeah.
I'd say, you know, well, come on, be level with me. You know, we've got 2 stops before we get off. What did you really think about it? And I remember this one woman just looking at me being like... And I was like, oh, here it is. She's going to say it. Someone is actually going to tell me what they really have made of this event that has taken months of planning and practice and work. She went, well, the speakers were okay, but lunch wasn't as good as last year. And that is how your audience think. They're mostly judging you by lunch. And we've spent hours of mental anguish making sure the best version of ourselves is put forward. Really, we should spend more money on lunch.
Well, exactly. As long as they've got good lunch, they're happy.
Totally.
That is so funny. That is so funny. And what about the ick we feel when we're trying to... When we're in that position where we've got to do some self-promotion? Because that feels uncomfortable.
Of course. And I think to all English people, it should feel a little bit uncomfortable. We hate those interview questions. The first questions we get in a job interview, I always find the least comfortable, because they're things like, so, tell me about yourself. It feels like a first day. You're like, oh, I'm terrible, honestly, run away now.
Yeah.
And that's not the reality. You just don't want to answer the question, because you have to talk about all of the things you're really good at. It feels uncomfortable for a number of reasons. Firstly, just because it's cultural. It's just not in our DNA to put ourselves forward and be like, I'm great. What do you make of that? There is a way around it. And I think if you don't feel comfortable out sort of sitting in front of someone and saying, look, here are all of my achievements. Do you want to buy in? There is a better way of doing that. And it comes back to that point I was making earlier about it's not about you, it's about them. And that's a really brilliant thing. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah, do.
I was working with an individual who really wanted to start doing this kind of thing. They wanted to really stand out amongst their competitors, and they worked in an industry where they were a little bit slow to the uptake on social media, LinkedIn posts, that kind of thing. So he said to me, you know, this is a real opportunity. I just need to put myself on the camera, talk about what I do, and I'm going to have so much content to really knock the edge off my competitors here. I thought, yeah, this is great. So we worked on scripts. We set up times to film. We had a nice little setup, a little bit like this one. I thought, this is great. We put the camera on him. We counted down.
Yeah.
And he froze. And he just said, I can't do it. And I said, what do you mean you can't do it? He said, I just cannot talk about myself like this. I went, okay, all right. How do we get you to do this in a way that at least starts to feel comfortable? And what we did was we replaced self-promotion with storytelling. If you cannot sit there and talk about how great you are, and I recommend you don't anyway, talk about how great you've made other people. Suddenly the shift is not on you, but look at how I helped. Look at this story here. I've had that kind of Cinderella moment, rags to riches, and there I was. I just so happened to be the one making this thing happen. Now, that's going to be effective for so many reasons. One, you're going to feel so much more relaxed talking about it.
Yeah.
2, it won't come across as egotistical. 3, it's much more interesting for your audience, who can suddenly see themselves in the role of the person you're helping. They're going, oh, okay, I see what you're saying here. So actually, what you've just described there is a problem I too suffer with. It's so much more relatable. And so we took him away from this kind of slightly advertisey sounding monologue, which
is the worst. It's the worst feeling when you sound like you're advertising yourself.
Yeah. I'm right. Do you believe me yet? The self-doubt will come through in the sound.
The imposter syndrome just rises. Yeah.
You just think, I'm not that great. I can't lie to all of these people. But you can talk authentically about case studies. And that is always my number one recommendation. You don't actually need to talk about me, aren't I great? That's telling people what you want to tell them. Instead, tell people what they want to hear. This is how I helped someone in your exact position. That is where the magic is.
The storytelling is such a skill, actually, and it really does transform when someone's speaking. I find that, like you say, people aren't then engaging in what you're saying about yourself. They're engaging in the story, and then, you know, they're transported. It's like when you're a kid and you can just sit there and listen to a story and take insights from that. But it doesn't come naturally.
No.
I don't find it comes naturally.
It's weird because it should.
Yeah.
We've been doing it since we could formally communicate. You know, they find cave paintings and they're just stories. You know, this is how we hunted the thing and provided the food. We are hardwired to tell stories, but for whatever reason, you're right, it doesn't come natural.
It doesn't feel natural, but you're right. We should all be able to tell stories because it's just replaying something that's happened.
What do you find the blocker is for you?
I guess it's trying to make it sound engaging. So I could share what happened, you know, with a case study about a client. I could share that quite easily. It's knowing how to make it sound engaging. And I guess one of the things that I remember learning in your workshop actually was almost having a bit of a framework or a structure to help position, you know, you've got the content, but actually just trying to bring a story to life with a bit of structure and framework really helped.
Yeah, the basics are essential. As I am constantly reminding my father, a story always has 3 parts, which is beginning, middle and end. It's not just end, middle, but it really has to be in that order.
Yeah.
You will often try and mess it around. You have to have 3 parts to a story. For my clients, they often have a beginning, they often have a middle, and then it's the end bit that they forget. And the end bit is essential.
You're so right.
If you think about any communication advice you're given, job interviews, STAR method, situation, task, action, result. Result is the one that's always missing. If I'm working with clients on pitches, call to action is the one that we've really got to have. People think, well, surely it's obvious. No, we need that.
Yeah.
I call it the big white wedding moment. We need to know, if we looked at how your client was struggling before you came along and did all of these magical things for them, what do they look like now? What's the after?
I wonder whether there's a link to the self-promotion bit with the ending.
Totally.
Because then that is the bit, that is the section of the 3-part story where you're actually then having to say how something you did achieved this outcome.
Completely. And it's not just, again, it becomes more comfortable because it's not just, and so we help them become this, and that proves that we're really fantastic people. You go, and the clients are really fantastic people now, but now they're even better. They're able to scale, they're able to grow, they're able to do all of these amazing things that they weren't able to do before, and now their profit has reached X million, and it's due to them partnering with us. And it's just that little... because of us. Yeah,
that's the bit that feels self-promotional, but as you say, it doesn't when you tell it as a story. It is the truth. And you said there's an element of cultural aspect there, so it's an English cultural thing to not be too self-promoting.
I think the Americans have it right.
They do it well.
Have you seen that Christmas film Elf?
Yes.
So my favourite scene in that film is where Buddy is walking down the street. Is it Seattle? I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's like a crappy little coffee shop, and they have that neon sign that says world's best coffee. And he's like, guys, you did it. World's best coffee. And this is brilliant because it's so American. They know there's no legal implication of saying you're the world's best coffee. No one's going to... So why not say you sell the world's best cup of coffee, even when in this circumstance, you clearly don't.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes us Brits miss that trick.
Yeah.
Why can't we use that a little bit more? Just a touch.
It is funny, isn't it? I mean, my daughters actually, funnily enough, every time they see something like that now, they really question it. They, you know, when they see the world's best such and such, you know, that claim, they really question it now. It's really funny.
And they have every right to. We are allowed to exercise skepticism and make our own judgment. But if you are not promoting yourself when you can, you're going to miss a trick that your competitor doesn't. That's important.
Exactly. What is the cost? I mean, you've worked with so many leaders. what is it costing them when they're not out there self-advocating?
I have never sat down and calculated the number, so I can't give you a fully tangible result. What I can tell you is this. I am often called in when they know there is a problem because opportunities are being missed. When they know, do you know what? That should have been us. But we're just not presenting ourselves in the right way. Again, I will give you an example of that. I am often brought in to help with pitches. And I remember I was working with this company that were they knew they were up against the big four. And they were much smaller. And that was dictating their entire mindset. We're the smallest. How do we make ourselves seem bigger? How do we make ourselves seem bigger? How do we make ourselves seem bigger? And so we were looking at their pitch, and their pitch had quite a slow start, I would say. They did that classic mistake of, we have X amount of people, we have X amount of offices all around the world. Each office has X amount, and that classic trip of proving themselves.
Yeah.
When they didn't need to. Obviously, the people they were pitching to knew they were the smallest option. They weren't idiots.
Exactly.
But they had been chosen to be part of that lineup because they were the smallest option. And so if you look at your strengths in that lineup, why might you have an advantage here over these big guys? Well, actually, the people you see here, they're the ones you're going to be working with. And actually, we know we're not one of the big four, but we're going to move a lot faster. If you've had experience with those guys, they're very good, obviously, but they don't have the flexibility that something that's more boutique might have. And so suddenly you start to play to your strengths. And on top of that, you're not hiding behind the facts anymore. You're not pretending to be something you're not. And it feels a lot more comfortable. So to answer your question, if you don't push yourself forward in your best possible light, someone else will. And that is that opportunity missed, and that could be costing you millions, if not billions.
Absolutely. In your book, which, by the way, is brilliant, might
Thank you so much.
I've started to read it. It's a bit battered. I've got it
Good,
here.
good.
It's
That's
a
how
bit
they should
battered.
look.
Yeah, because I've been reading it on the on the tube every day, and I look a bit like a crazy woman on the tube because I'm sat there like smiling because it's really witty.
That's
really
ideal.
humorous, but I love the stories in the book. And you talk about being different, like actually celebrating that difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because especially in today's world where everything is copy paste, you know, you've got AI that regenerates the same message in a different way, but you're essentially saying the same thing repeatedly. Or, you know, that you look at socials and everything looks the same, just slightly reworded, you know, so actually being different feels like it's the competitive advantage of today's world.
Entirely. How are you weird is a question I ask my clients.
How are we weird? Yeah.
They look at me like I'm weird, and they'd be correct in that assumption. How are you weird? What's different about you? What are you hiding from me?
Yeah.
What do you want? All of these little questions help me understand what the USP of that company or individual is. The more I start to understand an individual, the more I know how to play to that strength. But what makes you different is your greatest asset. So let's push it forward, not try and hide it away. There is a time and a place you want to blend in. People drink Starbucks coffee. I don't. I think it's really very unpleasant. People love it.
Yeah.
And I think they don't like the coffee. They like the brand, and it makes them feel part of a community. And that's a very good thing. And that's a very useful and profitable thing. Sometimes you want to do things a little bit differently, particularly when you know you were in a beauty parade. How are you going to stand out?
In your book, just going into that a bit more, there's a bit where you talk about stating the bloody obvious, right? And I always worry that sometimes we are stating the obvious because surely it's obvious.
It's a really good point. And I have this conversation, I would say, maybe once a day, quite seriously. All I ever say to that is this. The amount of times I speak to audiences and it's just gone, and they've missed it because someone didn't state the bloody obvious, I would say happens 9 times out of 10. The amount of times someone comes to me and goes, well, it was bloody obvious, wasn't it? Oh, that was a bit simple for me.
Yeah.
I have heard maybe twice in my career.
It's true. Because actually sometimes it can be obvious, and either perhaps it might be obvious to you but not the other person, but also that sometimes people just want that reinforcement or validation, right?
Even if it is obvious, what's the harm in stating it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. If this is the basic, if this is the only message you want to land it. People can wait the 20 seconds whilst you state the bloody obvious, and then you can go into the detail. But if you start with a detail and then follow up with a bloody obvious at about minute 9, you've already lost them.
Exactly. So how do we overcome this feeling of cringe and this, I guess, this lack of confidence we feel?
Yeah. Lean in.
Lean in. Okay, go on.
You are going to feel uncomfortable. It is not your right as a human being to feel comfortable about everything every second of the day. Or if you do want to feel comfortable about everything every second of the day, fine. But you're not going to get very far.
But exactly. I mean, for me, I love being out of my comfort zone because I'm growing.
Yeah.
Right? Every time I'm out of my comfort zone, I know I'm self-developing.
Totally. And I think people go, particularly with public speaking, because everyone hates it. Oh, no, that's not for me.
Yeah, people hate it.
It's still apparently the number 1 fear in the world.
Yeah.
The number 2 fear in the world is death.
Oh, wow.
So if you find yourself...
public speaking.
Number 1, death.
Number
2.
1. Wow. Even greater than death. I mean, nowadays, they do teach it more at school. And we never had that opportunity. I definitely didn't have that opportunity growing up. Public speaking was never something as part of our curriculum. But, you know, I look at my daughters now and they're always asked to stand up and present.
Fantastic.
And I think it's so good because it is such an essential skill. And especially, again, where, you know, automation is coming in, AI is coming in, lots of mundane tasks can now be automated. Actually, the value comes in the human aspect, right? And how we lead and how we communicate.
And how we stay weird and how we get it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. How we get it wrong. Absolutely. Because otherwise we don't learn.
Yeah. AI gets it right consistently. Have you tried it? It's fantastic. Never misses a beat. Human beings are weird and they get it wrong. And they try and hide that. In actual fact, that's the bit we need to lean into, for sure.
Yeah, being our authentic self, being unfiltered, being raw, being unpolished, and actually just being human.
Yeah, totally. And I love what you're saying about your daughters because, as you can imagine, I am a real advocate for this should be taught at schools. And we're finding the younger generations are really, really struggling.
Yeah.
If you are sat here listening to this as a parent, here are my tips. Get your children to talk to each other at meals. Get them to tell stories from the day. If they can tell a story to their family, they can tell a story to their friends, and they will become storytellers.
Such a great tip.
If consistently, all of my clients who end up in front of me and have deep stage fright, deep anxiety around public speaking, I talk to them a little bit and lo and behold, we never did this at school. No. I was always allowed to do nothing when it came to audiences. There was none of this available. When I was a kid, I would always get in trouble. It was all, Mum's got a report card from me somewhere, because the teacher would make us stand up and read whatever book we're reading. We had to do a little extract in class, and we had to go up to the teacher's desk, do a little reading exercise. I discovered quite quickly that if I could do the voices of the characters a little bit too loudly, I would get a good laugh, and I'm constantly attention seeking, and I would always get in trouble for that. And I think that's where the fun stuff came in. I encourage that.
Yeah.
Make other people laugh and you will outlive AI. Whatever your job is, if you can make other people laugh, you will have the edge come 2030, 2050.
And do you think humour comes naturally? Because, I mean, as I said, I've been reading your book and, like, literally every paragraph has something that makes me smile. But do you think that comes naturally?
That is a good question. Humour comes naturally. Comedy is something you can work on.
Yeah.
I have a few friends who are stand-up comedians, and something that really I find deeply interesting is the building of a joke. When we see comedy, when we see stand-ups telling stories, having a laugh, it looks so natural. It looks as though they've just sunk 1, 2, 5 pints, wandered onto the stage, and they're just telling stories. I can tell you they have researched those stories. They have gone to little very quiet open mic nights. They've tested the materials.
Yes.
And they've literally, did that get a joke? Keep it. Did that not get a joke? Cut it. And so what you're seeing is something really honed and edited and rehearsed and directed. That is how you make something look so completely natural.
It's incredible. I mean, I went to a comedy night, actually, just so happens on Friday.
Yes.
And just watching him stand up, this guy, that, you know, there were times when he had quite a tough audience.
Yeah.
They weren't all laughing at every joke.
No.
You know, he had quite a tough audience, and he was just on the mark, you know, was coming out with things constantly, and engaging with the audience. But I just thought to myself, gosh, standing up there would be
brave.
terrifying.
It's brave.
It is brave, because you're standing up there, you're getting mixed reactions, or sometimes lack of reaction from the audience, but you've got to keep going.
Yeah, totally.
It must be the hardest thing ever.
I think it probably is. I think there is nothing harder than stand-up comedy and just finding that material that lands. And I have some clients who they work with me and they go from very, very frightened to very, very confident to really quite confident to I'm almost addicted to public speaking.
Wow.
When's the next TED Talk?
I want to get to that.
It's easy. But the final boss, as it were, of public speaking is stand-up comedy. There is no harder gig.
I agree with you. You, in your book, you talk a lot about practice.
Yeah.
You know, that speaking comes down to a single factor, practice.
Yeah.
And you just, you know, with the example of the comedy, you said, you know, they go and test the material and refine it and refine it and refine it until they're sort of better at it. And so practice. What do you think we're not doing when it comes to practice? You know...
Yeah. A lot of my clients say, well, I've been practicing this all week. And I think, I don't know if you have. And what they actually mean is, I've been reshuffling the slides all week.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, that's not practice.
It's not practice. Practice is the art of actually letting those words come through your brain and out of your mouth. That's the bit no one is doing. And I think everyone assumes people who are brilliant speakers don't need to practice. We practice all the time. That's the big secret. We are practicing constantly. I came here via the tube, not to show off. But as I was on the tube, I was thinking about, what are the stories I'm going to tell?
Yeah.
How does this and I say things out loud. And again, I look a little crazy, but it means when I'm here, some of those lines will come through and some of them will even land in the way I want them to.
Yes.
But it's all about practicing, saying it out loud. There is a brilliant quote by Dolly Parton, which is, it costs an awful lot of money to look this cheap.
Yes. I read that in your book.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Public speaking is the same thing. It takes an awful lot of practice to look so natural, to look as though you just walked up, delivered something that day, went down a storm, walked up. That natural, relaxed approach has taken months of practice. So it is so valuable. Yeah,
because sometimes you think, oh, that person's just a natural public speaker,
No
but
such
actually,
thing.
no such thing. It's all practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that comes back to feeling okay with being outside of your comfort zone and not necessarily always having it perfect. And I think, you know, when I started the podcast, I'd say that, you know, I've almost used the podcast as a mechanism to practice and get better. I wasn't perfect from day one.
No.
My first episode wasn't perfect, but I'm enjoying the process of practicing and improving and refining.
There is that voice in my client's head the moment they've built up, and now they've got to say the thing. And it's that voice that says, this has to be brilliant, that stops them.
Yeah.
Whereas if they tell themselves, just talk as the way you talk every single day of your life, suddenly they can talk. It's that this has to be good, this has to be good, this has to be good. Tell yourself, this has to be confidently average, and something will appear.
And it's okay. You actually give away one of your secrets quite early on in the book.
Then it's worth the money.
It's worth the money. It's worth the money. If you haven't bought it, go and buy this book. It's really good. You talk about the fact that actually, you know, you'd be out of a job if people realised that presenting was just speaking.
Public speaking is just talking.
It's just talking.
No one's noticed. If you hear that, don't listen to that, because I will lose clients. It is just talking.
Yeah.
It's the thing we've been doing every single day of our lives. And suddenly we label it as public speaking or networking or pitching. We go, I don't know how to do those things. It's just talking with a few formulas. And that's it. And it's just that and a bit of practice. And suddenly we're out of this mindset of this has to be brilliant. And if it's not brilliant, it's terrible. It's just talking.
It's just talking. Talking of formulas, you've got a few really great ones in your book.
Good.
Yeah, really, really useful one. And I saw one about confidence.
Yes.
It was confidence. And it was knowledge plus practice times experience equals confidence, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah,
but
that's it.
You get asked all the time by clients, make me more confident.
Yeah. You can't. There are confidence coaches out there. I'm sure they're very good. The other day I was reading a shampoo bottle and it said confidence in a bottle. Sure, why not?
Great, I'll try some of that shampoo.
I think in the age of 2026, it's suddenly become unpalatable to not be fully confident. We have got all of these little things selling us confidence. It's okay to not be confident.
That's a really nice takeaway, especially with social media, right?
Yeah, totally.
That has a huge influence.
Yeah. All of the hashtags I use, I know if I use the word confidence, we get a higher rate because people are looking for this magic bullet for confidence. If you are out there looking for the magic bullet for confidence, step one is to work out that it's okay to not be confident. You've made it this far without feeling fully confident. You can probably make it a little bit further. Absolutely, there are tips and tricks. And the best thing to do if you want to grow confidence in this area is actually the title of the book.
Yeah.
How I managed to squeeze 70,000 words out of just that one sentence is a miracle, but there you go.
But there is so much to it, and it's because you share so many really interesting stories. What's one story that really stands out to you?
Probably the story that for me always stands out to me. I have a very clear memory of it.
Yeah.
And for someone with a bad memory, that's a good thing. It was probably one of my first gigs. I was very young. I would have been in my early 20s. And I was put with this client, and I have given her the name, I can't remember, Brooke Shields. Brooke Shields is the not real name of the person who it actually is. Brooke Shields is a weightlifter, and she lacks confidence. She's a very, very, very good weightlifter. She's becoming a national hero quite quickly. And the one thing she hates is talking to the press. And as an athlete, that is actually holding her career back. And she's seen all of the very good coaches that were available in the country. She's had all of the media training, and she's still she knows if she's got to follow up a match with an interview, it's going to impact her performance. So her agencies are really keen to get this fixed. So she's in this position. At the same time, I'm very young and I'm very inexperienced, and I've got to meet this sort of athletic star and tell them how to be confident, and I'm not feeling very confident at all, and I don't know what to wear. And we had the story in itself is true. Characters' names may have been changed, but the story in itself is true, which is I'm 5'0". She was very, very tall and had this incredible physique. There was a reason she could lift these weights, and this woman was just as terrified as I was. And when we realized that we were both kind of pretending, we just decided to stop pretending and mess around. Now, this is the important bit, the messing around. We both decided quite quickly, well, my techniques aren't going to work for you. What should we do? And initially, we just did that thing, just pulling out our phones, doodling a bit, lying to people, telling them we were doing the work. And then we thought, this is quite boring. And so she starts to show me how to do various weightlifting techniques, just because we're bored at this point. And we start to talk. And I don't really know what happened, but it was a moment of, F it, let's just mess around. And suddenly that moment of messing around, she starts to realise that the world isn't out to get her. And I realise she's not out to get me, this woman who's extremely tall. And we start to mess around, and we start to have conversations, and we both start to talk about our vulnerabilities. I start to talk about what I was worried about. She starts to talk about what she was worried about. And suddenly something shifts very slowly. It's not an instant shift, but she starts to realize that actually, if she messes up, that's not a problem. She does just need to say something. And it doesn't matter, in my opinion, if what she says is blunt, or if what she says is perhaps not what the BBC journalist wanted to hear. She starts to say stuff. And I think athletes in particular are put under so much pressure to talk about something where they were mentally on another level. They can't think about how do I footballers famously say, well, it was a game of two halves, because they don't know what else to say. So she starts to tell herself, what, I don't necessarily need to give these incredible stories. I just need to say how I'm feeling. And she starts to do it, and she starts to speak to the press in her own language. It might not be what they want, but it works for her. And suddenly something unlocks. and she becomes someone who is able to talk to the press and someone who's very confident in that atmosphere of cameras and lights and weird questions. And she became this real superstar. And I often tune in and see her and think, she's great. She was very dry. We both had a very good sense of humor. And she was hiding it because she thought it was, I couldn't, that's not serious.
Yeah.
Use it. The moment she started to use it, it all came to life.
And that all comes back to being your authentic self, right? And in your book, you talk about care less.
Yeah.
You say that the 70,000 odd words in this book all boil down to care less.
Yeah, totally. Care less. Care less about what other people think of you. And if you crack that one, let me know how. But we all care desperately what other people think about us. The characters we meet in life who care less about what other people think about them are the ones who I see as just flying. They just have it. They are making mistakes. They're occasionally crossing the line, not too far, but they will occasionally say the wrong thing and they will occasionally not deliver brilliantly. But they don't care, so they get up and do it again because they don't care.
And then you get practice.
Then we get the practice loop. When we care, we look back on our performance and we kick ourselves for every tiny thing that went wrong. And that makes it so difficult to start again.
Yeah.
Care less, do it again. Care less, do it again. And over time, you will get better and better and better.
I agree with that. I mean, I've almost gone on a bit of that journey myself. For me, one of the things that I guess I've got familiar with is, or got better with, is just being accepting that I'm participating.
Yeah.
And, not everybody's participating and it doesn't have to be perfect, but just participating, I sort of have to congratulate myself for doing that.
Totally.
And when I do that, then I feel less bad about the fact that something's not perfect because I'm just participating.
Yeah. I think that's so true. And I think I always remember at school, I was not a sporty kid. You may be shocked to
Me
hear.
neither. Me neither.
And I'm very much not into the ethos of everyone gets a medal. That's because that's not how life works. You've got first, second and third. But I do think you get to pat yourself on the back as the non-sporty kid for just going, do you know what? I was thinking about pretending I had a headache, but I took the biggest step and I decided to participate. And you know what? I've come last, but someone needed to come last.
Exactly.
I almost think that is just as noble a person who participated, knew they were going to do badly, came last and is going to do it again, rather than the kid who knew they had a really good chance of coming first, second or third.
I agree. And that's it. That's almost a frame of mind you need to put yourself in when doing public speaking.
Yeah.
Just saying, do you know what? I'm going to give it a shot.
Fine. See what happens. That's the title of the book. Just
say it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Go from there
Yeah.
and you'll get better. Or don't, and nothing will change. And eventually you'll become my client, and that's a very good business model for me.
Exactly. So tell me a bit about your business.
Yes, if I could, I would. My business it's myself. It's a small group of actors who have extraordinary experience in the acting world and also a little bit of experience in the corporate world. We run workshops. I do the one-on-one stuff. We do keynote speeches, but it's so much fun. It's a really unusual business. Sometimes you find yourself on a podcast. The next day you might find yourself in New Delhi giving a talk to a group of people about what happens when storytelling works. So it's a really exciting business that I try and grow
That
with
sounds
some
fun.
success.
Yeah,
Not full success, but some success.
well, we've got to have
You've got that
end
self-promotion.
point, right?
I should have told you a story about how successful I was.
Exactly. That was the end point. The some success.
Just should have left it at some success. It's like when British women go, I like your dress. And you go, thank you, I got it in a charity shop. No, I found it in a bin. Yeah. We can't just say, thank you. It's very kind.
Yeah.
I like your shoes. That's what we should do.
No, you're so right. You're so right. We need to get better at that. So if there was one lesson that you think leaders haven't yet learned that you would say, right, this is something you need to work on, what would that be?
I could give you something ethereal and abstract, and certainly the title of the book is that. I think I'm going to give you something practical.
Go for it.
I always ask my clients two questions. Firstly, why? Why are you doing this? This is questions I ask myself on the tube to this podcast today. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this to self-promote? Are you doing this to educate a group of people? Are you doing this because you've got a message to land? What do you want the outcome to be? Why does this matter? Why should anyone care? Why? Once you have boiled it down to its purpose, you can move on to question number 2. Question number 2 is super important and really difficult. If the audience can only remember one single sentence in everything you're about to say, what would you want that one single sentence to be? When you've got that, all you need to do is land it. And it doesn't matter if you say nothing else or too many things. As long as that one message lands, your job is over. And it's amazing how often I speak to leaders, entrepreneurs, founders who do a good job, but they don't understand why it wasn't a great job. And I say, well, what was the one thing you wanted to land? And they have no idea. Work that out before you start speaking, and suddenly everything will fall into place.
That is great advice. In my company, we actually have a 3-part framework: define it, improve it, sustain it. And the very first part is define it.
Yeah.
And how many times do we skip that and jump straight to the implementation, jump straight to that big speech, but we don't take time to actually say, why are we doing this? Yeah. What do we want to get out of it? Yeah. What's the message, right? And actually, if you spend the time defining it, the rest of it just comes naturally.
Just falls into place. You and I were talking about AI. Everything has to be AI powered now. If not, what are you doing with yourself?
Exactly.
But no one is asking, why must this be AI powered? Or what would it look like if we used AI here? I'm not against it. I'm not for it. But it has to be done with purpose.
With purpose, with intention.
Totally.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Susie. As always, I love our conversations. I've taken away so much, and I think our audience will have too. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. There were so many great takeaways from my session with Susie today. The big CI fix from today's episode: make sure you're clear on your why. Why are you there presenting? Why are you giving this speech? And the second part of that question, once you've defined the why, is to be really clear on what message you want to actually get across. What is the mission behind this? What do you want to achieve? What is that one message you want your audience to take away? Once you've got that, you've defined it. After that comes the practice. Now, I was shocked to find that public speaking is actually the number one fear that people have. It's the thing that they most dislike. Even death comes second. So in order to be less fearful of it, in order to get better at it, we need to practice. We need to take part, participate. It doesn't have to be perfect. We all have our high standards, but do you know what? Progress is what it's all about. Thank you for joining today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.